Welcome to another exciting episode of the Life at Ahead podcast. I'm your host, Nick Rodriguez, and today we're exploring the power of groundbreaking technologies and how Ahead's communities of excellence foster innovation. The pace of technology development is moving faster than ever before. Every day, new advancements emerge, pushing the boundaries on what we thought was possible. But amidst this constant change, how can we truly be innovative? And what does innovation actually mean? In this episode, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Josh Perkins, Ahead's VP of Emerging Technologies, who is a passionate advocate for the groundbreaking technologies that are shaping our future. Josh shares his vision for what lies ahead, and we discuss the profound impact the Ahead communities of excellence have had on fostering innovation. We also sit down with two community leaders, Andy and Ian, who share their experiences and shed light on how these communities are shaping the direction of our organization. Whether you're a tech enthusiast, aspiring innovator, or simply curious about what the future holds, this episode is for you. Join us as we uncover the passion, vision, and inspiration, driving innovation and propelling ahead into the future. Welcome, listeners. I have Josh Perkins with me here today. Super excited to have him on the podcast. Josh, how are you doing?
Very good, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to be talking about innovation and our communities of excellence with you. But before we get started, for the folks listening who don't know who you are, can you give us a quick overview of your role?
Sure. Josh Perkins. I look after what we're calling emerging technologies at Ahead, which is really an umbrella for a couple of kind of key elements of our organization. First and foremost, we work across our kind of field CTO, our kind of chief evangelist roles across the organization that focus a lot of effort on kind of helping define and look at vision across our kind of top customers and partners. I look after our solutions experience or AKA briefing program and kind of how do we think about putting that vision into play with our customers in longer format strategic meetings. And then I also look after our labs group and organization and how do we kind of bring tangibility to some of the solutions that we're trying to bring to bear for the market. And then most recently, we really started taking on this kind of thoughtfulness or proactivity around what are we learning across all of those interactions with our clients and partners in the broader kind of technology community, and trying to interpret that into a more proactive approach to what's coming for Ahead and the types of things that we need to be thinking about, evaluating, and building towards in order to kind of stay ahead of the curve, pun intended, and really kind of make sure that we're maintaining a kind of forward-thinking thought leadership that our customers can take advantage of and our partners can lean into as they think about how we kind of go to market together with our clients.
That all sounds incredible. We're talking about briefing experience. We're talking about labs. We're talking about what the source of innovations and visionary looking forward in the future. I said visionary, but I think I've told you this before, Josh. Every time I talk to you, I'm like, this guy's a visionary. Like every conversation we have, it's so forward thinking and innovative, right? Even before this call, while we're getting warmed up, we end up talking about an RFP, like AI bot basically to help us respond to RFPs faster. The time before this that we were talking about, you were giving me an overview of ACEs, and it just sounds amazing. So I think you are just the guy to be in this role, and I'm super excited for for what you're going to do in 2024.
Well, thanks. I know I do, and I'm sure my team really appreciates the continued confidence that so many folks across the organization have placed in us and placed in us every day. So I think you called out something really intriguing there too, which is, I think while I may have made that sound very externally facing, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for us to really think about how do we innovate in our own organization? How do we really think about not just what technology means for our customers, but what can it mean for us as we continue to kind of grow into the large enterprise that we aspire to be? And I think that's something we're certainly kind of keen on trying to think about as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're kind of looking, like you're saying, the external facing and also the internal facing and figuring out emerging technologies for both. And, when you're talking about emerging technologies, I associate that a lot with innovation. And when I think about Ahead's value around innovate and what you do, I feel like you're right at the core of this value. And so, I'd love to get your perspective on what does innovation mean to you? How do you define it?
Yeah, I think that one, like I think there's a lot of different ways to think contextually about what innovation means, especially in our industry that's so immediately involved in kind of the technological undertaking of where businesses are trying to go. I think at the highest level, I think about innovation really as the combination of an invention or some sort of solution times its commercial value, which is really the idea that you don't want to create inventions that don't solve anything, that people don't understand what it's for. So that's where the kind of commercial value kind of component of that function comes in. And I think that this doesn't mean that everything that we do that's innovative is like a massive transformation. A lot of innovation is really going to be how steadily and frequently can we maintain an iterative approach to improvement for clients, right, or the technology ecosystem over time. All that said, like there's the other side of this, which is really the how someone applies it is really, really key to the commercialization value of that innovation.
Hmm.
And so, when we're looking at things, I think we look at it and say, are these generic shifts in the technology estate, right? Things that are broadly applicable to all the clients we serve, right? And will have implications across all of them. And then digging deeper into that, what are the unique applications or changes coming? And that's where things like industry verticalization and kind of that kind of contextual understanding of how our client is going to apply it in their own business or in their own terms kind of has to layer into that idea of innovation as well. And so, a good example of this would be something along the lines of, AI is a very broad term, an umbrella for a lot of different kind of groundbreaking things that we're going to see in this space.
Hmm.
But until you really dig into, in a lot of circumstances, like how healthcare is going to apply it and their unique nuances of how they're, what they need to do with it, that it's not deeply innovative, right? It's generic. So what we're really trying to say is how well can we understand the top level technology piece, and then how well can we start understanding and building a material expertise around how it's going to be applied over time in that particular space, so that we can speak the language of the people that we're trying to work with and sell to in these particular areas. And fundamentally, like innovation also yields the fact that it's new, right, to a degree, right? Like that's kind of a core principle behind it, which means we need to think about it in terms of what capabilities we need to build and how we need to deal with the uncomfortableness that comes from the idea that we're not going to inherently have expertise. And so you have to think about new ways of working within our teams and with our clients if we really want to be something that, someone that can help them execute against innovative technology.
Yeah, I really like what you're kind of talking about, where there's innovation and making sure that what you're doing is relevant, right? And then making sure that what you're doing, like you can come up with this new idea, this new way to work, or whatever it might be, but then you also have to kind of like explain it a little bit in old terms so that people can relate to it and then take that step forward. And then at the same time, you also need to be able to talk to how to actually go and execute this on like the ground level, like deeper
Sure.
into it sort of thing. So it's like, even if you come up with this new idea or new whatever, there's so many layers to it that you're going to have to like drill down into and like get comfortable with.
When it's really incumbent on us as people that want to be like, strong partners and advisors to our clients, is that like one, audience matters, like who we're in front of should dictate kind of how we're thinking about how we're messaging and to what level that we're really approaching something that we would deem as kind of an innovative technology. But the other piece here is that the pace of a lot of this is changing very rapidly, which like this the speed of what we need to do and how we need to think about these things continues to accelerate. And so the side effect of that is, we're going to have to get better and better, especially in these spaces, of using our clients as a group that we work with to think through some of these spaces. Like the idea of co-creation, especially when it comes to emerging tech, is a muscle that we need to, work out and continue to flex as we grow.
I really like that. I'm curious what like recent like innovations or emerging technologies that you are particularly excited about and why.
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of two spaces that I find myself kind of most near term interested in are really like, what are we anticipating the consequences of AI success to be in the organizations we serve? So beyond the kind of near-term hype cycle of like, obviously, every single investor call has somehow incorporated that every company is doing AI to a degree at this point. And certainly since kind of that Prometheus moment of ChatGPT last November, there's way more interest than there is capability to execute right now in this particular space. And so I think there's stuff that we can do to build and support the things that are happening right now, and the anticipation that our enterprise clients are really probably going to start taking advantage or trying to build against some of these spaces in the next 6 to 12 months as it kind of moves into their segments. But I think what's interesting to me in that space isn't really solving the problems of what that looks like as much as it's assuming that we're successful and we help some of our clients navigate what's next in that space. Like what's the natural progression of that success look like, and what are the implications to the organizations we do that work with? So, if you're thinking about it as something that's like deeply augmented to their workforce, then what, right? And I think sometimes as technologists, we get so hung up on the what and how components of technology that we lose the why to a large degree. Organization is doing it, or what the long-term implication of that use is. And so that's where I'm starting to think really like focusing more effort around is, things like decision intelligence is one of those concepts where can we simulate an entire enterprise workflow and combine multiple AI methods. And there's tremendous business value in being able to execute at that level. So how can a head be in a position to really start thinking about it more as a combinatory effort and less as an individual, singular project? And then the other piece of that is like, if that's the data side of the coin, which is how are we getting more insightful around how businesses run and how efficiently they do that, then I think the other piece is just the downstream implication of everyone thinking about the digitization of their business. And I don't want to use the phrase digital transformation because I think it's extremely over leveraged. But I think the reality is that every single one of our clients is trying to think about the way digital products will impact their business and their ability to go to market, and the elasticity with which they'll be able to leverage their workforce and provide good experiences to their clients. And so if I play that back and think about, what do we need to do? We need to help development organizations and teams get more and more focused on driving out the delivery of those products in an efficient, effective, and a secure way. And so like, how does that kind of root thesis, like, hey, people need to build these things and they're going to be more and more interested in doing it. How does that shake out for a firm like ours in terms of the tangible things that we can help, build the right foundations and get our clients closer and closer to a preparedness point where they can go do that successfully? And fundamentally, I think that relates to this idea in no uncertain terms that the businesses that we work with are continuing to make massive investments in technology because they want to generate really good digital experiences for their kind of employees and clients. And they want those digital experiences to generate data that then allows them to make better decisions on what they do next with their business. And the more that we can embrace that truth, I think the better position we as an organization will be to helping our clients realize that future.
Yeah, you're already thinking about the long-term implications of AI decisions, right? I really like how you're kind of like thinking, okay, cool, but like what's going to happen like 4 moves from this? It's going to have the business impact on it. I'm just curious, like, how do you keep yourself sharp? How do you keep yourself up to date on this stuff? Like, where are you learning it?
Man, I couldn't be born at a better time to try to self-learn, right? Like, I think the amount of free education and enablement that exists at this point, our curiosity is greatly exceeded by the potential avenues and channels we have to fuel that curiosity. And so, like, to me, I voracious reader, right? So like, I don't think I've picked up a piece of fiction in forever, unfortunately. I just read tremendous amounts of nonfiction. And I try to really look at content that is a mix of more technologically oriented and things that feel comfortable in our space, and then stuff that really applies completely different perspectives to problems and challenges that maybe gets us out of the echo chamber of a technology organization and the technology ecosystem that then kind of better informs, right, those perspectives and ideas. And I do that in terms of kind of stuff that I'm seeing, tremendous amounts of news, lots of YouTube videos get watched from different groups. So, subscribe to newsletters that come in every day and kind of create a channel feed for things that I'm seeing or interested in. Follow a lot of people that I find to be intriguing and interesting, and read their content and stuff that they're doing. So I think it's really about the massive fire hose at this point that's potentially possible, and trying to hone it more and more on stuff that I think provides diverse perspectives and keeps me intrigued, right? Like continues to fuel things that maybe I'm less familiar with or less comfortable at. And I'd say I tend to be a pretty autodidactic individual, which just means like once I kind of get latched onto something, I'll dive deep into the rabbit hole and try to figure out as much about it as I can. And so I think that, you can't do that on everything, but picking a few things that really fuel that, personal passion and alignment, continues to kind of keep it sharp. And then the last thing I'd say about that, not to kind of go into too much, is I think the time I spend with clients has been massively impactful. So just the idea that I get to go ask so many different executives and technology leaders across our client base the same types of questions, and really listen and try to understand and connect what's going on in their space is an unbelievably valuable resource for us to continue to leverage and pull from. I think the idea that we're going to be innovative independently enough to sustain is silly. I think the reality of this is we have 1,000+ amazing clients to crowdsource needs from, and then drive that to try to determine where we can optimally place bets to meet unmet challenges. And so I just say, like, read, listen, right? And then go have conversations with people that are living in different situations than you, that have different perspectives, and try your best to figure out how to synthesize that into your own perspective.
Yeah, I love that. And what I really like about kind of what you were talking through is that, like, I was imagining this as all these different data points that you're connecting between, and in different mediums that you are connecting with them on, right? Talking about reading newsletters, which is probably a little bit more short form, than finding the longer form thing, and then finding the video to listen to, and then connecting with clients, and then connecting with other people. And it's just kind of bringing all of this together into a single like point, which is in your head, which sounds like it could be very overwhelming. But every time we talk, it's like you know how to channel that so well.
I guess lucky in that way, right? But it's really fun, and I honestly think too, like, testing that all along the way, right? So like, I think the thing that I like the most about pulling together all types of content like that is you can immediately put it into practice and play, right? So like, I don't read a book without immediately testing the things I read about in that book in the next set of conversations I have. It's about like embedding what you've just kind of absorbed, and then integrating that into kind of your own vernacular and your own thought process as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the times people can be really quick to just kind of like in and out, right? Like,
Yeah,
I experienced it and it's over. But I think it's like, keep it there, hold it in there. And then when you go to have that out, apply it, try to practice it, do it on something, and then see how it worked.
well, and try not to just regurgitate it, right? Like, don't just like assume everything that you read is factual, right? I think that, like, that's the other piece. But without getting like too far into the weeds, I think the big thing is just like the curiosity element, right? Like, just if you have a question, there's a good chance a lot of other people have had that question, and there's an even better chance that a large group of people have spent time in answering that question somewhere for you to go find. It's never been easier to really continuously self-improve through that process.
Yeah, I like what you said about not trusting everything you see right away. I enjoy going to the gym, and I've been doing a lot of strength training in the last half of 2023. And it's so funny because I'll see something, I'm like, oh, I really like that exercise. Let me go to try to do it. And then you keep scrolling, and then you see something else where it's like, never do that exercise, and you want to watch this. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, wait, hold on, what is actually true? And then because I am curious and I do want to learn more about it, then I'm looking things up online. I'm like, okay, what's the general trend? Where are people saying this is right? Who are the people who are pushing against it? Why are they saying that's not good? And then the whole time, I'm like, I go to the gym and I'm like, all right, let me try it out. I'm like, yeah, they're right. My shoulder hurt. I should definitely try the other way or whatever. But
Yeah,
kind of like practicing and applying it, but getting a wide breadth of perspective is always healthy.
yeah, agreed.
I'm curious, you're talking about kind of like the way that you keep yourself sharp, co-creating with clients sounds really important, but I'm wondering, what other ways are you preparing for the future and trying to stay ahead of emerging technologies?
I think, like, trying to get more and more involved with what I think are like the kind of horizon structured elements of how this plays out. So I think, looking at the different timelines of the way technology goes from idea into kind of pervasiveness across our clients is really probably like a 5 to 7 year window in a lot of circumstances, beyond the kind of maybe front end research that fuels a lot of that. So I think what we're trying to think about too is how do we how do we take a look and listen to more of like the venture capital community and people that are even on like the more errant front end of things, and then how does that parlay into like the product development R&D teams and our core partnerships, and how do we get more involved with those groups to understand how kind of maybe that 5 to 7 year time horizon turns into a 3 to 5 year time horizon. And by the time that becomes a 3 to 5 year piece, we should probably be thinking about the types of capabilities and partnerships and other things that we need to start building against, because it's going to take us time to get to a point where we have an educated position, we have a point of view that makes sense, we understand the ecosystem, we have people that can not only think about it from a selling perspective and design perspective, but people that can start thinking about it from an implementation and experience. So I think it's just like, when I think about how do we fundamentally build and systematically approach this moving forward, it's really like how do we start bracketizing out that funnel and thinking about like, okay, reverse engineering the timeline, so to speak, to say, what do we need to do to be appropriately proactive in a way that these things aren't hitting us out of a surprise? Like we're not going to be perfect. There's definitely going to be things that come out of nowhere, right, very rapidly or evolve very quickly that maybe we weren't ultra focused on. But I think we can do a heck of a lot better job at saying, like, I kind of see everything that's going on in this pattern in terms of the buckets that are the most meaningful and most adjacent to the stuff that we do as an organization, and then get better at interpreting that into the types of investments and in types of actions we need to take a little bit further in advance, so that we feel more confident as that becomes more material in our clients.
I like the reverse engineering sort of thing where you're like, all right, we kind of know the timeline of innovation and how this applies into enterprise. So like, let's work this backwards sort of thing. Like if we're here, let's imagine here. And then what are the steps to kind of work this back? It's very interesting.
I think that, it's a really natural dovetail into why I think the communities piece is such an important kind of manifestation for ahead in the long run. One, to borrow a Linus Pauling quote, I think I used it Accelerate last year, which is like, the best way to have great ideas is to have lots of ideas. And I think that, innovation is not something that's owned by an individual or led by an individual in an organization. It just can't be if we want to be really good in all these different domains. And so to me, communities, and even like as that evolves and matures and how we build kind of maybe tiger teams or more focused groups within those communities and approaches to certain particular types of technologies or in the pursuit of a specific industry, I think that it's going to be so important for us to be able to kind of get multiple perspectives together and kind of singularly threaded against how we pursue these types of things and how they become a bigger part of what we do on a day-to-day basis ahead.
Yeah, I'm super interested in the communities. I saw the Archie page. You mentioned them at the beginning. I talked about how you'd kind of given me an overview on them before, but for the folks who are listening who don't know about our communities of excellence, can you give us a quick overview on them?
Sure. We think about communities as a mechanism to get, people from all across the organization with different roles, different experiences, frankly, just different passions together and collaborating on either different technical domains, i.e. things like platform engineering, or we're spinning up one right now called Blue Cloud, which is our approach to Azure, right? In light of the Amazon SDA, we still want to make sure that we're, thinking about and innovating in the other hyperscalers as well. And so I think, some of that stuff will happen very naturally, but I think there's the technical side, which we really want people to, across the practices, to view this as a mechanism where we can think more holistically and less within like isolated domains. And then the other kind of types of community we're thinking about are really more industry or vertically aligned, which is how do we start kind of sourcing between passion or frankly previous employment and previous experiences, people that were involved in specific industries that can help us provide more context to the stuff that we want to go work on, or the types of problems that our clients are experiencing, or challenges that they're trying to solve for in those particular spaces. And communities is really meant to be a platform for a number of different things, right? Whether it's how do we start the ideation process and solutions build process, right? People have a good idea. How do we start bringing that kind of idea to bear and testing it out and figuring out what works? It's meant to be an enablement construct, which is like, can we bring different partners or maybe even eventually clients to kind of come to the community meetings and talk about a specific thing they're working on, and that engenders new ideas in that particular space. And then I'd say lastly, it's really also meant to be a mechanism to create and showcase the wonderful stuff that people are working on that maybe is, under visible in certain circumstances across our teams and across different domains. And, I think when we can get multiple people working together to solve problems from any capacity, it deserves, some proper highlighting and showcasing to the rest of the org. And I think that over time, if we do that the correct way, it's really a building scenario by which we think more and more people will want to come along for that ride and help us build what's next for ahead.
Yeah, that's so cool. I like that it's it sounds like it's just kind of open to anybody, and as long as you're passionate about it and willing to participate, it's a community that you can be a part of.
Yeah. I think the balance there obviously is, passive engagement versus active engagement. So, really the inflection point for us is how do we get a community from a lot of people that have expressed interest in something, which is great, right? It's a great starting point, to how do we get, as many people as possible actually engaged in those interests. So contributing to different efforts, providing perspectives, getting more enabled, right? Coming to trainings, showing up to meetings, being part of the dialogue and not just, attending. And so I think, for us, we're learning a lot, right? In the first year of the program around stuff that has worked and not worked. We're going to continue to obviously invest in it and evolve it in lieu of the stuff that we're trying to accomplish. And I also think that communities are a great way to integrate new people into our business and new businesses into our business as well, which is really just a great point of building your personal network and trying to understand like who's who in the zoo to a large degree across ahead.
I really like the part that what you're talking about with active engagement. This summer I was part of a leadership program, and it was one of those things where like there wasn't a whole lot of networking up front, but they expect a lot of like group discussion. You're kind of like sitting in this room with like 30 strangers, and like no one really wants to talk. Anybody who knows me knows I was probably like the first to raise my hand and just try to start the conversation going. But like I remember the first couple sessions being rough. Like not a whole lot of other people talking. I'm like, hey, I'm just sitting here and I'm just sharing my own idea. I don't want other people to feel like they're drowning in my ideas, but you need to like help me and balance this out, because like the proctor needs someone to get this going.
Sure.
And so by the time that we got to our last two sessions, everybody's got their hand raised. They're trying to talk. I'm like, yeah, if only we had that like up front, we could have had like so much more of a meaningful experience during this time. I still really enjoyed it, but I think it's super important. Like if someone's going to sign up for something or they're saying they want to attend, you got to lean in. Like you got to be active.
Well, I think some of that, I mean, especially in like the experience you're describing, people have to feel a level of confidence and psychological safety in order to contribute, right? And I think that calls out a really good point in what we're trying to do with communities. Like the reason that we call them communities of excellence and not centers of excellence is because there's no preconceived notion that to be part of the community, you have to be an expert already in the topic that the community is trying to understand or get better at. And I think that's a big part of the psychological safety idea, which is like, there are no bad ideas. There are no dumb questions in this space. Like the expectation is you're here to learn and others are here to learn. And by joint contribution, like the rising tide raises all boats to a large extent. And so I would just say like, please engage, but also don't feel like, if you're joining an automation community and you're not already an expert at, Ansible, that's okay. That's expected, right? Like, and you should come bring that curiosity that we talked about earlier and hopefully we can help direct you to personal things that will make you feel more confident and more structured over time and fuel that curiosity even further.
The marketing in me is like, all right, Josh, you got to tell the listeners, how do they get involved with the communities?
Calls to action. Well, so I mean, it's really easy. So we're continuing to add communities based on different industries and different domains. We'll continue to launch and honestly even reframe some of the ones that we already have to make sure that they're applicable over the next 12 months. And we'll keep posting them in Archie. And so there's the kind of sign up form if you're really interested in a particular community, and that will notify the leaders of that community to get you added to kind of all the different sessions. It'll get you added to the team's channels, get you kind of as part of the discourse of the overall kind of group, and provide access to maybe the materials that they're working on or kind of other things that can kind of fuel that forward in the conversation, broadly speaking. And then there's also the opportunity for, those that are incited to their own individual idea of this is like, you can create a new community, right? We've already had some people come forward and say, I think that there's a broader interest in this particular area, and I'd like to take the mantle of kind of seeing or discovering whether or not other people have that same interest. And honestly, like that's the baseline for one of our most successful communities right now. Was a couple of folks from our data team said we think there could be a lot of people interested and don't know enough about data science, but there's lots of curiosity. And they sent a form in and said, here's our first 10 people that have decided that they're also interested. And now that group has over 70 people in it. There's certainly stuff that I think is a good idea. And then there's a lot of stuff that hopefully the organization will organically and holistically believe is a good idea. And I'm really hoping that the latter of those greatly outnumbers the former.
Sounds like you've got like a really great setup to like foster innovation, right? It's like, hey, everyone's welcome. We want your new perspectives, different ideas. You aren't the sole person who can do this. There's so many other people who are interested. And it just kind of gives people that space and that opportunity to be like, hey, if you want to get involved, if you want to start innovating, you want to think about these communities, or you're passionate about them, we've created that space for that. And I think it's awesome that people have the opportunity to jump in.
Yeah. I'd say the one other thing about this that I think is an important call out, because I get this feedback all the time, is, well, like, how do we make the time and space to do this, right? Like everyone's already low bandwidth in terms of having additional things to work on. And this sounds like, more effort and more work. And I would say like, one, I think hopefully if we can get you aligned to things that really do align to something you're deeply interested in, it won't feel that much like work. And then two, we do have mechanisms in place that if you're actually contributing work, building IP, helping us design something that, maybe comes to fruition, maybe even doesn't, right? But it's the start of something material for like, we have mechanisms to make sure that you're properly able to allocate your time and find the space to work on and do those things, because we do think it's incredibly important to kind of foster this scenario. So just don't let that be a self-imposed objection to participation.
Yeah, I like that. You had mentioned the data science community having a really great startup, 10 to 70 came out of, people wanting to do it, right? I'm curious what other like highlights from ACEs have happened since you started them.
One, I think from a industry community perspective, we saw people take, very different approaches between like how to get things started. And certainly, those things at the beginning have aligned to kind of our biggest customer base elements that we think that there'd be the most people participating in or having, most direct alignment to. But, I look at like the healthcare community and say, we do a lot of business in healthcare across clients. It's anywhere between 30 to 40% annually, in a given year. And I think the way that community has really taken it upon itself to be an education opportunity, a forum for our partners to come in and focus specifically on what they're solving for and thinking about in that industry. It accomplishes exactly what we were hoping for to a large degree on the front end of the project, which was just like, we might not be in a position yet to say like, here's the 10 really groundbreaking solutions that the community is building for healthcare. But we know that the starting point there is building a vocabulary around what's going on in that particular area. It's about getting people more comfortable talking about the way technology is being leveraged in the context of healthcare providers and healthcare organizations. And I think like over time, and it's a long play, that's going to yield absolutely amazing things. And I think that, the more comfortable people get with that, to our kind of previous point, the more they'll want to contribute and the more they see value from participating in that particular space. So I think like different communities have taken different approaches. And I'm also really excited to watch communities overlap. For example, the financial services community had the leaders from the data science community come in to their community meeting and talk about specific use cases and applications that they were seeing for insurance and banking and investment management customers. And I really hope that we can continue to foster a level of cross-pollination in that extent as we move forward, because there's really nothing better than when you get multiple groups of people with high conviction and high passion working together towards common cause.
I'm telling you right now, just listening to it, I feel inspired. It's the place I want to go, sort of thing, where it's like other people who are excited about something, who are willing to share, provide some learning opportunities, stuff like that. It's one of those things where I'm like, man, I'm so glad that we have this. It sounds so wonderful.
And we're building, right? I don't want to give anyone the notion that we think we've gotten this 100% dialed in or that it's perfect. We're going to continue to iterate on it and learn from what's working and not working in different groups and try to make sure that we create mechanisms and repeatability to those kind of components in other spots. And I would just say, like, if you bring your passion to it, we'll do our darndest to make sure that it's put to good use.
Yeah, I feel like you got the key ingredients there.
Yeah.
When I talk and, marketing background, everything sounds so extravagant and amazing and everything. It really does. But yeah, it definitely is a learning process. And I'm sure that, if anybody wants to help contribute to that success of the communities or where they're going, it sounds like they should join.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's going to be opportunities to lead communities too, right? And demonstrate, your own personal and professional growth through those particular avenues as well. So I think it's a absolutely critical component of our success as an organization over time. We just got to figure out how to make sure that it gets the right amount of attention and provides enough value to everybody to live up to that expectation.
Oh, I'm glad that's what you're focused on and thinking about. Like what you were talking about earlier, like, all right, where's this going in like a couple of years?
Yeah, build for what we want, right?
There we go. Josh, I think we could sit on here for 2 hours and talk, but I know you've got a schedule. I'm wondering if you got any closing thoughts you want to share with the audience.
I've never worked anywhere that I've been so passionate about the potential of what we do here and like how we apply it across so many notable and important organizations that are shaping our society and country overall. And I just think we owe it to each other and we owe it to ourselves to show up and absolutely try our best and to think bigger and think differently. And I think I would just end on saying like what got us here won't get us to where we want to go necessarily. And so come help out. We're looking to harness everyone's best. And whether that's communities, whether that's contributing to labs, joining us in briefings and helping clients transform the way they think about the organization, or whether that's aspiring to be part of our kind of direct field and emerging tech team directly, like we all have things to work on and passions to pursue. And if I can help anyone in any way get closer to that point, I'm absolutely here to do so.
Well, Josh, thank you for your time today. Every time we talk, I learn something new, and I also leave feeling very activated and inspired to go do something. So I assume the rest of my workday is going to be me crushing it. Thanks to you. So Josh, again, thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you having us on.
Welcome back, folks. I have Ian Cox with me here today. Ian, how's it going?
Pretty good, Nick. How are you?
Doing well. Can't complain. Very excited to learn more about you. I feel like most of the guests I have on my podcast I have worked with before, but we have not had the pleasure of working together yet.
Great. Well, very pleased to make your acquaintance as well, Nick. I'm excited for the conversation today. I am a delivery manager in the DSG Data and AI practice. I manage a team of data engineers and architects, and I'm going to be talking to you about the ACES data science community today.
Awesome. I have to circle back on one thing. Ahead, I assume everywhere in tech, but ahead, especially from my experiences, big acronym plays. Did you say DA and AI?
I said data and AI.
Okay.
Yeah, so DSG I dropped in there as well, but Digital Solutions Group. For those that aren't aware.
Yeah, I thought it was like data analytics. I was like, all right, I already have 2 acronyms in my title. You've got like 4. I don't know. You got
We're always adding in data, always adding new skills.
Yeah, fantastic. Can you tell me a little bit about your role?
Sure. So, as a delivery manager, I'm mainly responsible for ensuring that my team is aligned to billable opportunities that are matched up with data engineering skill sets. So, that could span the gamut from any number of different things from data modeling, data architecture, stand up of that architecture in the cloud, enablement on that architecture, and also different areas of data just in general, such as data visualization. We have a huge amount of Power BI work, a lot of SQL writing and data organization in SQL in one aspect or another. And more, we're seeing need for data science and AI type of initiatives. That is a hot commodity right now. So we're seeing more and more momentum in that realm.
Very cool. Sounds very, I'll say innovative or at least cutting edge. So that's going to keep it exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an industry where the landscape of tools and techniques is changing rapidly, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to keep up with. But we think we're doing a good job partnering with some really great technology partners that are helping us ride that wave and staying current in the market.
Yeah, yeah. And so you had mentioned this before, and I know because I talked to Josh about a heads community of excellence. You lead one of our technical communities, correct?
Yes. So I co-lead the ACES data science community with one of our principal data scientists, Ben Prescott. He's aligned to Matt Sweetnam's team, and both of us actually went to the same graduate program for data science. So we have a similar background, I guess you could say, although we've taken different paths to get to ahead. And now that we're both here, we're really trying to share what we know with the community and help kind of foster more growth in data science.
During your community meetups or whatever you might have, like what's the talk of the town in your community?
Yeah, so I would be lying if I didn't say AI wasn't the talk of the town right now. There's a huge push of everybody from every direction to leverage AI. And we believe that there are a number of AI techniques that are very applicable to, enhancing workflows for ourselves and for our customers. However, we think that there's also a little bit of FOMO in areas right now around the AI space. Nobody wants to miss out, and we're trying to help navigate that in our community. Now, in terms of some of the stuff that we talk about in our community, I think one of the biggest things that we've noticed of the interest that we've seen so far is just general enablement. Folks want to know what data science is. One of these biggest questions that we've seen is how does data science relate to AI? And from our perspective, machine learning and a lot of different data science techniques are a subset of the AI. And AI really is kind of a really gross oversimplification, bear with me, is using machines and computers to make decisions normally only a person could make. So that distillation right there is applicable to most things in data science and AI. So we're kind of trying to navigate that minefield of buzzwords and actual techniques there right now.
Cool. And what have you learned through your community so far?
Well, we've learned how much interest there is. And I mentioned this in my previous answer, but there's very much a huge buzzword in the market right now of AI. And I remember when the buzzword was cloud, and then the buzzword was data science, and now we're in a
Yes.
hype cycle around AI. And I believe that this is going to be as impactful as cloud was, as impactful as data science is. And I think it's directly related to data science as well. I think it's a natural extension. And what we're seeing through our community is just how much interest there is from different verticals, not just different verticals, but all sorts of roles and responsibilities throughout those verticals too. It's not just technical folks anymore who want to start leveraging these techniques, these tools. It goes all the way up the chain organizationally in terms of the folks we're hearing from, sales leaders, technical leaders, engineering leaders. There's all sorts of folks who have joined the community and really want to know how to bring AI and data science to their backyard, I guess you could say, and start applying it and improving the way they do things.
Yeah, when you were going through your quote unquote gross oversimplification of AI, the immediate question to me of kind of almost like a meme sort of thing, like what is cloud? And it's like,
Yeah.
what is AI? It's definitely like the next thing where you're making jokes about it. Except I think there's like an existential dread part of the memes that are going out with AI.
There's
But I think it's
definitely is.
yeah, I think it's really great. I use it almost every day. I actually just was having it create different rhyming structures for my Christmas cards. So
There
everyone
you go.
thinks they're going to be getting a customized, well, if they know me, they probably know I used it, but I'm creating fun little jingles for Christmas in my Christmas cards. So it's really nice.
That's awesome. And a great example of using generative AI to augment your workflow, however that may be. And that might save you, 10 minutes, that might save you an hour. It doesn't really matter
Hours.
there. Hours.
Yeah,
Well, there you go.
I can't rhyme, so
I can't either. And it's something that I would also leverage AI to help with. And we're going to see more and more of that. Just little bits of assistance here and there to help augment your current workflows. I've said this before, but is I would say some fear in the community right now of, oh, is AI going to come and replace me? Is my role going to be eliminated because it can be automated or anything like that? And I'm a big believer that data science and AI are going to augment and help improve the way that we currently do things. They're not going to replace anyone. In fact, it's going to be more important than ever to really be a subject matter expert to truly leverage AI and data science in an intelligent way.
yeah. And through your community or your own personal work, like what are some really great ways that you're seeing AI being leveraged?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think one of the coolest things that we've seen as part of the community is the sharing of different techniques. Obviously, generative is the hot topic right now with generating language and code and images and videos and all of that stuff. But there's a huge amount of value in a lot of the, I guess you would call them, quote unquote, more traditional data science techniques. Things like recommendation systems, things like predictive modeling on tabular data. There is a lot of value in that stuff. And really, one of the coolest things we've seen come out of the community is once we share different techniques and tool sets to achieve those things, people kind of take it into their own realm. And if I could give an example of something that just happened yesterday, we had one of our community members put together a really awesome building recommendation systems training for the community, and that's going to be releasing this week. And one of the coolest things about that was she took technique that she learned about as part of the community, and she applied that to data she went out and found herself. She had a particular interest in Sephora products. She was big on Sephora, and what she did was actually replicate the actual recommendations that are available on the Sephora website. So doing that, I think, is very powerful, and sharing is one of the coolest things that has come out of our community, kind of learning about something and then bringing it home to your realm of thought, to your interests, and then applying it there. I think that's been probably the coolest thing that I've seen as part of the community growth.
Yeah, I think that's really great, especially when I always enjoy when I had led my previous team here at AHEAD, part of the professional development that I would have them do is, okay, you went and learned something, time to bring it back to the team and share it with everyone, right? Like, and it's not share the entire course that you just did, but what are three key things that you learned from this? And one of the things I learned was, this is O365 stuff, but double click that format painter button. And it's just the format painter for the rest of the time until you click escape. And I'm over here and I've been working for 15 plus years and I'm clicking once, highlighting, going back, clicking once, highlighting. And I'm like, this is really great. But I think that's that super important follow through whenever you're learning is to go then teach and then other people get to learn. But when you go to teach something too, I think you kind of like really drill in that lesson.
I love where your head's at with that, Nick, because I'm a big believer in that as well. I don't think that you truly know how much you know until you try to teach someone else. And it's a humbling experience being a leader in this community, thinking that I know a lot of these different things. And when I try to put it to paper, try to distill it into, a 30-minute prezzo or something like that, you really kind of have to get creative and you really have to learn more. And we've seen that in the folks that have put together trainings. We have more coming, and I've learned that myself as part of this community build is, how much care and effort it takes to really create a good enablement program.
Yeah, and so you're talking about that one example of the relationship modeling with Sephora and them coming back and training. I'm curious, like, what other ways do you keep the community fun and interesting?
Yeah. So one of the things that data science does have going for it is a collection of many different techniques. There used to be about a decade ago, there was the concept of the data science unicorn. And that was someone who knew everything there was to know about data science, from computer vision to natural language processing to statistics and experimentation. Um, However, the field has really evolved and kind of fractured into many different subdisciplines at this point. So anybody claiming to be a unicorn at this point, I would almost raise an eyebrow to, because it's such a big skill set. You have to have a limitation somewhere. So to bring it back to your question, one of the coolest things we've seen come out of the community, and one of the things that really energizes us that we've learned, is how many different pockets of interest there are. Some folks joined the community because they want to work on computer vision stuff. Some folks join the community because they want to build predictive models with tabular data. A lot of folks join the community because they want to understand what the heck is going on with ChatGPT and large language models. So I think in terms of keeping it fun and interesting, it's really trying to do justice to all of these different subdisciplines. We need to make sure that we're not just focusing on one particular thing, but really covering the landscape of tools and techniques, and how we are doing this work with our customers, how we're going to market with these platforms as well. There's really a lot to share, and I think one of the things that we've noticed keeps it engaging is trying to cover the whole life cycle of all of these different tools and techniques.
I'm curious what you find to be the most rewarding aspect of your community.
So I find personally that sharing what I know is very rewarding. And I see that reflected back in the interest that has been generated from the community from that sharing. One example is recommendation systems. We were sharing information about recommendation systems, and one of our community members really kind of took that to heart and went off and created her own training to share building recommendation systems training for the community. And I thought that was particularly powerful because someone saw something that we were talking about and kind of made it their own. And that's what one of the benefits I think is to sharing in the community, is really kind of not being a gatekeeper in terms of any type of information, putting it all out on the table and for the community, saying, here, this is what you can do with all this cool stuff. Go off and do it. And then we've already seen the fruits of our sharing there. So that, I think, is probably one of the most impactful things that I've gotten out of it.
Yeah, I think it's always cool, and it's funny when like you're teaching something, you have a very pointed, like a perspective on what you're teaching for and how it applies to like work you're familiar with. But then there's that student who's looking at it and they're applying it to something you haven't even thought of yet, or
Exactly.
like, wouldn't even consider, and then they're like, oh yeah, this is boom, and they connect those dots, and that's definitely an amazing feeling, I think, as a teacher and as a student.
Yeah, that's such a great point. It's impossible for anybody to think of all the possibilities of use out there, especially in data science. So I'm extraordinarily welcoming of folks with different perspectives and different angles who can come in and kind of put their own skill set to use there with some of these data science techniques.
Yeah, I'm curious. Have you had any other like aha moments?
The biggest aha moment, and I've kind of touched upon this a few times, is just how much demand there is for AI right now. We've talked to customers, we've talked internally, we've talked to our sales leaders, and every single company out there is talking about AI. And really, what we have realized is that the speed of things is incredible right now in AI and data science. What was available like 6 months ago is already, outdated. One example I can give you is Google Bard. Earlier in this year, immediately after ChatGPT was released, Google Bard came out. And I won't comment on any type of use. I didn't use it too much myself, but fast forward to just last week, and Google released Gemini, and the speed of tombstoning old tools and coming up with new ones is faster than I've ever seen. And it definitely warrants attention to be quick to cover what is available and also hone in on things that are going to have more staying power. So I think that's my biggest aha moment that I've realized from this community.
Yeah, it's almost like a little mix of like predictions, like betting sort of thing, and like
It's
knowing.
very much so.
I think when you're working with it, you'll know you know what's up to snuff and what isn't usually.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the power is in the use. We were talking earlier about how we use some of these tools and techniques, and I would wager to bet that you headed to ChatGPT for some of the work that you were doing. And I use ChatGPT as well because the repeated use shows the repeated value there. And really, it's going to be kind of a value prop long term. What is showing the most value for folks?
Yeah, I mean, I find ways to accelerate what I'm trying to do. A lot of, even with my friends, I think we're joking about, like, we're out one night and we joked about creating a new brand of beer, and I just went and generated a new label for what the beer thing would be. We came up with names, and like all of a sudden we had like artwork, like, it superimposed on a beer bottle of people out there, and I'm like, yeah, we like just spun up our own little ad agency. But
it's gonna. Think about how much time that would have taken, in the old way of doing things. Like it really is a accelerator for everybody.
Yeah, I even think about like drawing the parallels to other tools and stuff, right? Like I use PowerPoint like so much, and it's like, yeah, this is a lot better than having to paint boards. and then like if you make a change on what the name is going to be or whatever, repaint the board or whatever. And same with like Excel, like that's like insane. So I think there's a lot of really great ways that a lot of people can apply it, and it's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what we need to reflect on in 2023, which I think is one of the biggest advances in AI we've seen as technology users, is that we need to enjoy the ride. Right. This is not a replacement. All of a sudden, this is not only about work. It's about being able to accelerate all sorts of different thought processes, different sorts of techniques and tools to get us the results that we want faster, whether that's in business or in life.
Yeah, I'd like to get involved. How do Ahedians get involved in your community?
Yeah, great question. So we have a community form that you just need to fill out, and just your name and where you're at, and we get you added to the community. We have monthly meetings, and we also have calls to action. So we have a lot of different things that you can help contribute to. We are slowly building a library of really cool content, such as recommendation systems training, large language models, RAG implementations, and more traditional stuff too. So regardless of who you are, what level you're at, what vertical you're in, I think it would be really valuable to join the data science community. And you might say, hey, that sounds really mathy. That sounds really like stuff that I don't want to get involved with. I promise you it's not. There's ways to contribute in all sorts of capacities, and some of our best contributions have been from non-technical experts. So I just have to say that if you are thinking about dabbling in data science, you are more than welcome in the ACES data science community. I hope to see you soon.
Awesome. And folks can find that form on the Archie page for ACES.
Correct.
So just go up, hit that search bar, type in Communities of Excellence, and you'll be on your way.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ian, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today. I got to learn a lot from you, and I'm definitely going to be checking out the community here after this call.
Awesome. Well, more than welcome, Nick. I'm sure you bring a fresh perspective, and thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Thanks. Welcome back, folks. I've got Andy here with me today. Andy, how are you doing?
Good. Hey, Nick. How you doing?
I am doing great. I remember, Andy, when you maybe not first started, but I definitely remember when you were working with David Berlin and we did a lot of projects together. But I also remember you having an awesome career path here at Ahead. Now being a field CTO, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. I mean, you're correct. I've been here for it'll be 9 years in March, and yeah, I came in as a delivery engineer. I think a lot of people, it surprised a lot of people to think about that. I came in as a delivery engineer and eventually worked my way up into the role I have now, which is very rewarding. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm having you on for this episode, but if I ever have a future career path episode, you would definitely be someone I would want to feature.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about your role as field CTO?
Yeah. So from my perspective as a field CTO, we carry a lot of bags. One is evangelizing, what we do across the organization, across our service portfolio. For me specifically, I focus a lot in healthcare providers, that is. For those that aren't aware, 40 to 45% of our business is in the healthcare provider space. And so for me, engaging with clients specifically in that industry allows them to see what we're doing with our other clients, right? So meaning understanding how I can provide value to them, as well as how we can engage and maybe align to more strategic initiatives. So I think we're a little bit of a mouthpiece. So some people say tip of the spear, but I think any given day, we're brought into various scenarios to just be a representative and a face of the organization.
Yeah, and I think what's amazing is that you have that experience, right? That background where you're like, oh no, I was a delivery engineer. I know what this is going to be like when you go to implement it, but you can also zoom all the way out and talk like, long-term strategy and everything. And I think that makes you a very, I don't know if dangerous is the word, but the right guy in the room.
It can be, right? So I think there's a lot of reintroducing myself. I think a lot of recalibrating people who maybe have engaged with me in the past. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the ability to zoom in and zoom out provides value in many contexts and situations.
Oh, I definitely know about rebranding myself. I still get people reaching out to me about RFPs. I'm like, hold up. Yeah. So you're talking about healthcare earlier, and Josh, provided some light on our Ahead communities of excellence. And from what I understand, you lead a community of excellence. What does your community of excellence focus on?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the communities at Ahead, where they're broken down into two categories. One is technical and the other one's industry or vertical. And so I lead the vertical around healthcare community, and myself and another gentleman, Houdini, that represent, I would say, leadership within Ahead that really, I would say, scorecards. How do we get, I would say, folks that cover healthcare, whether they're client directors, CSPs, CSAs, interested in healthcare and passionate about healthcare? How do we get them talking? And so for me, I lead the healthcare vertical. I think it's important to make sure that we're getting those stories out there. I think it's a little bit of a science experiment this year, but I think we've seen a lot of positive engagement.
Yeah, I think, similar to even this podcast, right? Sometimes you just need to create the space where people feel comfortable to have a conversation, to ask questions, to share stories, whatever it might be. Because I think, especially in hybrid and remote, and heck, we're a global business, right? Like, I'm not always going to be in front of the people who are in different regions, like in Atlanta or Nashville or Phoenix or whatever. But if you can create the space for people to have, open conversations, there's a lot to be gained from that.
I think you're spot on, right? I think a lot of people, and I'm just zooming into our organization, that probably feel comfortable with maybe their direct contacts, and that's usually probably within a geographical region or maybe their team. But I think being able to break that bubble and getting people to talk outside of that region or that group or whoever that may be, I think provides them not only a platform to showcase what they do on a day-to-day basis, but I think just learn. And I think if there's one thing I've learned from the communities themselves, there's a lot of desire and hunger to learn. I think a lot of people are hungry for what's that new story? Like what's that new win, or what's that new compelling event that like got their client excited? Because people translate that meaning I can go take that story to my client and get them excited. But yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said. I think just giving them platform to speak and share ideas is very important.
I'm curious, like what stories have you learned through your community?
Well, it's not so much the stories, because I think in many cases, some of those do reach my desk in the literal, so like the literal sense or hypothetical sense. But I think from that perspective, I think the ability to share that story that maybe I hear, almost in a game of telephone, right? Maybe you get whispers through the organization of what it may or may not be. I think that the biggest thing I've learned is the value of hearing it from the person who actually executed the story themselves. And so it's not so much the specific story that gets me excited. It's more along the lines of hearing the details that went behind some of the decisions, or the details that went behind. And it's something as simple as maybe the client waffled on a decision and they had to delay something an extra 3 weeks, but then they went this path. And I think some of those things that come out with direct interaction with the people who executed that story, I think not only provides a lot of value, but it's very powerful when you provide that context to other clients, right? So it's easy to come in and say, hey, let us, transform your business to do X, Y, Z. Let's move applications to cloud. Let's not only, I'd say accelerate some of the application development. And we can go in many different contexts and talk about what you could do with the client. But the minute you start to make it real for them and put context around what actually happened with XYZ client, but more importantly, why they made the decisions they made, I think becomes a very powerful story. So at the end of the day, like if you break down a lot of our jobs in this organization, we're storytellers, and having those minute details are eye-opening. So to answer your question, it's not a specific story. It's the details that I can gather from the people who actually executed that story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's how a lot of people learn, is from, learning from the people who actually already did it before, right? And it sounds like even our clients are like, okay, who's done this before and why did they do it that way? I mean, even you can see it in the back of my camera. This couch, my friends own this couch. They had it already for 2 years. And I was like, I think this is a really great couch. I need a new couch. You already made it work. Like, I'm going to go buy this because I already know it does what it needs to do, and how they got it shipped and it checked all the boxes. I was like, we don't need to go looking. I don't need to make it hard for myself.
Yeah. And I would even take it a step further, right? If your friend came back and said, well, if you look at West Elm, they provide this option. You go in Crate and Barrel, they provide this option. By the way, we almost went with over here, and we hesitated because we like this option. And I think the amount of detail you can get around those types of decisions, and more importantly, like, why you contextualize it for the people who actually are empowered to make these decisions, I think at the end of the day, that they see a tremendous amount of value in that. And so I think just getting down to the specifics and the details, at the end they become very powerful. You may not be the one who actually helped XYZ client, but if you can understand the detail, I think you become a very powerful storyteller.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes when people are pushing for case studies or something like that, sometimes there's like this narrative around everything. And I think at the end of the day, I'm looking for give me the 90 word, the 3 sentences that I need to know around this, that is really that key information. And a lot of the times things get pulled up too high level and you won't get down into, the why for a lot of the things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What do you find to be the most rewarding aspect of your community?
So I think early on, when we were conceptualizing the idea of communities, there was a couple things that was, very apparent. One is, like, for my role is not to be front and center. And unfortunately, like the way we lead a lot of our virtual meetups, that has to happen. But I think what gets me more excited is connecting dots. And I say that because a lot of times, again, going back to people operate within their bubble, only engage within their bubble. I think the ability to connect dots with various people within organizations who may or may never, or I'd say in many cases may not engage with each other, right? Because they're geographically distributed, or maybe their roles would never allow them to interact with people in other geographies. I think allowing them to connect the dots and say, hey, like, you guys share not only a common theme or a level of expertise that I think is important, but more importantly, like, if you guys put your heads together, that there's something powerful there. And for me, it's not that I want to be empowered with what comes of that, right? For me, it's connecting the dots and watching it happen. And I think that's been the most rewarding piece, is knowing that our role is more importantly trying to glue and put, I'd say, common people together, but we're not necessarily supposed to be front and center or the main contributor, right? So I think to me, I see a lot of value, and more importantly, the most rewarding aspect I see is seeing other people leverage the platform or the community to do something that is either valuable for the client, valuable for the head as an organization, or just valuable for their own careers. I think that's that's what I get satisfaction in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, fostering collaboration, like what you're talking about, not having to be front and center, but at least giving people the opportunity to connect those dots. And also our value of serve, like, again, pointing back to the not front and center, but you are creating space for people to be better and kind of to learn and to grow. And I think that's really amazing. Mm-hmm. You talked about the virtual meetups. What are those like?
Yeah, so really early on, I think we realized that a lot of the folks that are interested in healthcare or work directly with healthcare clients, they're very distributed, and so we have aspirations at some point to meet in a in-person setting, but I think the reality of it is just with not only remote work and I'd say the idea that we are just very distributed, that virtual meetups need to be kind of the way we facilitate engagement. And so, we have day-to-day communications on Teams channels and emails and whatnot, but I'd say at a quarterly basis, our goal is to highlight what's happening in the community, right? So there's a lot of, I'd say, updates regarding, new partners we're bringing in or new solutions we're rolling out, or, you guys are aware of the podcast that Jay and Houdini did and making sure that's getting, distributed informally through channels. And then also just introduction to other team members. And so, one idea that we had to mix up engagement, and again, going back to like me and Houdini don't want to be front and center. Like we want other folks to showcase themselves. And so we've challenged that in many ways where we've had different members come up and speak virtually, and talk about either a client win, a client success story, or more importantly, just introduce themselves. I think there's a robust amount of skill sets in this space, and a lot of people bring different backgrounds, whether it's consulting or direct client experience. And I think allowing them to kind of showcase themselves, I think then creates that opportunity for people to reach out to them. And so, the virtual meetups are I'd say, just to summarize it, we talk about, quarterly updates. We talk about new solutions, and more importantly, just trying to showcase different members. And so we've done that in, I'd say, many different ways.
Yeah, it sounds like there's also like really great opportunities for people to step up and be a leader, right? Like, yes. Hey, it's time to introduce myself. It's time for me to share my story, right? And help other people learn from my experiences. And I think that's a great opportunity for anybody who's looking to kind of dip their toe in the water and being a leader. It sounds like the communities of excellence are a great opportunity for that.
100%. I can't express that more than what you just said. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, the virtual meetups sound great and being able to introduce everyone. What are the other ways that you keep the community fun and interesting?
Well, I think the other piece of it is just finding areas that people want to maybe not necessarily contribute, but 100%, I'd say, align towards their areas of interest, right? So we talked about the podcast. The other thing that we're working through was, blogging and other opportunities to align to our marketing schedule, as well as even we created a smaller team to focus on like solutions rollout. So working with our solutions development group and aligning it towards a healthcare portfolio that would resonate in the market. And so I think for us, it's giving, or I'd say, members an opportunity to maybe use their superpower in a way that doesn't necessarily have to be publicly visible, right? So like something like a podcast or a blog might be too publicly visible for some. But I think leveraging their superpower to help with solutions development, or looking at Gen AI use cases and working with our data and analytics team, I think that we've been able to find different areas for different people. And so I think that the way we've kind of mixed it up is keeping that open forum for people to volunteer. I think from there that provides more of a channel to I'd say for them to find where their passion lies. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
It sounds like, like you said, a really great opportunity for people to be able to flex and try something out, right? Like, you just mentioned Gen AI for healthcare, and it's fairly newish, but I bet there's people who are interested in that, and the communities of excellence could be a great place to come and learn about it, and share their experiences with it as well.
Yeah, and even to take a step further, right? I think so. There's a technical community around data science that's focused on Gen AI. And we actually had, one of their leaders come in and speak to our community. And so, you talk about the ability to, whether we're talking about cross solution stitching, or more importantly, even just, cross-referencing the various communities. I think that's another opportunity as well, right? Is knowing that like healthcare doesn't have to be the leader of Gen AI, but I think knowing that there's when I say healthcare community doesn't have to be the leader of Gen AI, knowing that we have a community that does focus on that, I think there's probably an area for communities to start collaborating. So not only are we talking about members within a community collaborating, I think community to community collaboration is just as important as well.
Oh man, it just reminds me of Ahead's old messaging of stitching it all together and just having everything weave in, because it is really all connected, right? And
yes.
So you're creating these communities and these spaces to be able to have some focus, but also acknowledging that, hey, there's areas outside of your focus that can have an impact on what you're trying to do.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, have you had any aha moments in your community?
I think from an aha standpoint, it's allowing, I think for me, going back to what I said around connecting the dots and creating, and I think you said it well, like creating a platform. My biggest aha moment was just allowing people to provide authentic contribution to it. Meaning we can't force people to contribute. We can't force people to be authentic in the way they contribute. But I think more importantly, like if you create a platform where they feel open to do that, as well as open to volunteer for things, I think that's where my aha moment clicked. Is that's what we want to provide? Is just a simplification, or just a simplified way of sharing ideas, right? And so I can't say it's anything profound, right, or from an aha moment standpoint, but it's more importantly just knowing that, like, it's that old adage around, like, squeezing a teddy bear. You just don't want to squeeze it too hard, right? You just want to make sure that you're providing just enough information and just enough access to the platform that people feel willing to contribute. But at the same time, it's not about me or any of the leaders. It's about making sure that, we can, as an organization, cultivate the ideas and move forward and innovate. Yeah,
that sounds amazing. And it's definitely a fine line to walk, right? You don't want to suffocate it, but you also want to make sure that you give it enough support and resources and attention, sort of thing.
Absolutely. So we as community leaders also meet and make sure that we're finding new ways to either, excite the members, or more importantly, find different ways to contribute. And so, yeah, I think it's an ongoing process is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, always is. I'm curious, if I'm an Aheadian and I want to get involved in your community of excellence, how do I get started?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So on our Archie page, there is a landing zone for communities of ACEs, or Ahead communities of excellence. And within that, there is actually a sign up form for each community. So for anyone who's interested in Ahead's communities and wants to register, you have to formally submit your registration to the form, and it goes to the leaders, who then, essentially, there's not strict requirements. We just want to make sure that we're adding the people who actually want to, expose themselves to that type of noise. And so from there, we'll get the request. We'll add you to the appropriate Teams channels. From there, you're included in the quarterly meetups. At least from my perspective, each community does a little bit differently. And so I would say Archie is a good starting point. You'll see the landing page for Ahead Communities of Excellence, or ACEs. And then within there, you'll see the different categories of what communities exist. There are different leaders for each of the communities. And so if you have any questions, I think, don't be afraid to reach out directly via email or Teams to whoever's identified as the community leader.
Sounds easy peasy for the Aheadians listening. I mean, if you're looking for opportunities to be a leader, to contribute to something authentically, to help start connecting some dots and to align with some of your passions, this sounds like an excellent program and set of communities to get involved in. Andy, any closing thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
No, Nick, I would say thanks for having me on. We're always excited to talk about the communities of excellence, and more importantly, I think any listeners out there that are wanting to jump in and take a leadership role, or more importantly, volunteer for everything that we do within the community, please reach out. I think we welcome the communication, and we're always looking for passionate individuals to join our ranks.
Awesome. Well, Andy, thank you for hopping on the podcast and sharing your story today.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
And that's a wrap on another episode of the Life at Ahead podcast. We hope you enjoyed our exploration into the power of innovation and the impact of Ahead's communities of excellence. If you're an Aheadian and are interested in joining one of Ahead's communities of excellence, you can get started today on Archie. We want to extend our sincere gratitude to Josh, Andy, and Ian for sharing their insights and experiences with us today. We're incredibly lucky to be surrounded by such passionate and inspiring people. And thank you to you, our listeners, for joining us today. And I look forward to having you with us in future episodes. As always, stay tuned, stay well, and stay ahead. Ahedians.